Gary, we're in the middle of 50 AP, not the top, in the middle.
Thank you.
Pictures are middle of 50 AP, about four lines in the wide lines, about 10, 12 lines from the bottom. So we had this Mishnah that spoke about the second pyre of wood that they would use for the fig wood, and it would be 4 amos from the southwestern corner, and we attributed that to Rabbi Yossi, which was what our agenda was, to prove that the altar was actually all the way in the north, and therefore all you had to do was just move the pyre 4 amos, and it's corresponding to the entrance of the holy of the Heichal. Now, another potential opinion of who the Mishnah is going like is as follows: Amar Rav Adabar Ava Hamani Rabbi Yehuda. Maybe the Mishnah reflects the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda, the kind of Rabbi Yehuda made the Emtza Ha'azara v'shloshim v'shayim amos hayulo Eser amos keneged piskol shel heichal 11 amos mikan v'achad amos mikan nimtza mizbeach mechuvan keneged heichal. So according to Rabbi Yehuda, you have the courtyard, and you okay, James?
Yeah.
And you put the courtyard, and you put the courtyard, and you put the altar right in the middle. So as you walk out of the holy area, right in front of you is going to be the altar. Now, the altar itself is 32 amos from one side to another. So when you put it directly corresponding to the heichal, what's going to be 10 amos are directly corresponding to it. And then the remaining 22 amos is 11 to the right and 11 to the left. So that's the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda, that the altar was right in the middle, not all the way to the north, rather smack in the middle, directly corresponding to the entrance to the holy area, to the Heichal. What's the problem? If that's really true, and the Mishnah reflects the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda, at the end of the day, why are you moving the second pyre of wood 4 amos from the southwest corner to be directly corresponding to the entrance? So for Rabbi Yehuda, remember, if it's going to be 10, if it's 32 amos total, and it's smack in the middle, so that means that 10 amos of the 32 amos altar is in the middle, corresponding to the heichal, to the entrance of the Holy of Holies, to entrance of the holy area, not Holy of Holies. Sorry. Now, 11 amos to the left is the remainder of the altar, right? 11 to the right and 11 to the left. So now the southwest corner is where it's 11 amos away from corresponding directly to the entrance. 10 of the amos directly correspond. 11 to the left don't. So according to Rabbi Yehuda, if you want to bring the wood from the southwest corner, you need more than 4 amos. You need to bring it 11 amos. Once you get from 11 amos, so now you're in that 10 amma middle area. It's 11, 10, and 11. So then you'll be in the middle. So yeah, the Mishnah says though only 4 amos. Okay, now maybe you'll tell me that the holy area, the heichal, and the antechamber, the ulam, which is in front of it, which is wider than it, maybe they share one sanctity. And if they share one sanctity, so then when it says that you have to put the second pyre corresponding to the heichal, to the holy area, maybe it means anything which has the same sanctity as it, which could even include the antechamber, the ulam. So what's that going to gain for you? Just 5 amos, because the ulam was 5 amos wider than the heichal. So even those 5 amos would, if your wood is corresponding to even those 5 amos of the antechamber, that's still considered valid. But that's not going to help you. Why? Because even if you move over 5 amos to the left, to the south, so at the end of the day, you still need to move the wood 6 amos. Remember, the altar is 32 amos. 10 amos correspond to the holy area, the heichal. We're adding 5 amos more now that correspond to the area called the antechamber, the ulam, which has the same sanctity as the holy area. So what do you gain? 15 amos of the heichal are corresponding now to the holy area. Fine. But at the end of the day, you are 11 amos. The leftmost part of the altar is 11 amos away. So if you gain 5 more amos, you still need to move the wood 6 amos to be corresponding to the opening. So, does that make sense? Yeah. So, shiz by the mesay. You can have something free of charge. It's my prop. It's my altar and my holiness, everything. So it says shiz by the mesay. You have to still move the wood from the leftmost part, the southernmost part of the altar, right? It's 32 amos. So from that 32nd amma, you have to move it 6 amos to be corresponding to a holy area, not 4 amos like the Mishnah said. So it says tomorrow, okay, 1 second, but you made an assumption how these 4 amos are calculated. Let's figure that out. Hani arba amos. Maybe when you said 4 amos, so it wasn't that it was 4 amos, 1 for the base and 1 for the ledge. Maybe it was 4 amos excluding the amma of the base and the ledge. Now, if you're counting 4 amos excluding those 2 amos, you just gained yourself 2 more amos. So really it is 6 amos from the southernmost part. You're just counting 4 from the top of the altar. From the top of the altar, if they move it over 4 amos, you're not including the base and the ledge. If that would be true, so that would be a way that the Mishnah could reflect the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda. Yeah, arba amos bar me amma yisov the amma sove. So, okay, so that the Gemara accepts. Says the Gemara, well, once you're doing that, the nukme Rabbi Yossi uba mamutza, meaning you had a whole proof that Rabbi Yossi must be that the altar is in the north. According to what you just told us, you don't have to put the altar in the north. You could put the altar smack in the middle. It'll 10 amos of the entrance of the holy area correspond to the 10 amos of the altar. You're including the antechamber as one sanctity, so you've gained yourself 5 amos. You're excluding 2 amos of the base and the ledge. But at the end of the day, we're good to go. You have to move the wood of the pyre, the second pyre, 4 amos from the end of the top of the altar over. By doing that, you're now corresponding to the entrance of the holy area. So you didn't have to say that Rabbi Yossi was in the north, and that's why the southern part was corresponding to the opening. You could have said he's in the middle, and that would have been good too. Says the Gemara, basically, you're right. But Mishun Rabbi Yehuda Shamanale Memutza Behedya. At the end of the day, we heard from Rabbi Yehuda that he explicitly stated that the altar was in the middle. So since he said that, that's what we attributed to him. Rabbi Yossi, you could have, but we didn't hear it from him. That's why we didn't attribute it directly to him. Okay. A third opinion of who this Mishnah could possibly reflect. Rav Sharbia Amar, Hamani Rabbi Yossi Aglilihi. Maybe this is really reflective of Rabbi Yossi Aglili. Okay, let's see. Okay, so now we're gonna talk about the altar, but we're gonna add in another factor over here, which is the sink, the washing station. So we're gonna have 2 verses that are gonna seemingly contradict each other, and then we'll have to reconcile them. V'nesata sekior bein ohel moed. The kior, the washing station, the sink, has to be between the ohel moed, tent of meeting, and the mizbeach. Between means sounds like nothing could be in the middle. It has to be directly corresponding to the tent of meeting. That is one verse. Okay. Another verse says that's mizbeach ha'olah, and the verse ends off saying that the mizbeach ha'olah, which is the outer altar, has to be. Where's the verse? Has to be Pesach Mishkan Ohel Moed. That has to be corresponding to the opening between the tent of meeting and the outer altar. So you have 2 things over here. The washing station has to correspond to the opening, and now this is all by the tabernacle, but when it comes to the Beis Hamikdash, it's going to be the Heichal, the holy area that we keep talking about. The sink, the washing station, the sink has to be corresponding to the opening of the holy area, and the outer altar has to be corresponding with no interpositions in the middle. There can be nothing blocking it. So how are you going to have both of these? How are you going to have both of them corresponding to the opening? So one answer is, so it says Mizbeach Pesach Ohel Moed, below Kier Pesach Ohel Moed, and the sink can't be blocking your altar from the opening. But at the same time, the sink itself has to be corresponding to the opening. So if you like pictures, here we go. Yeah, a lot of pictures. So it shouldn't be so complicated, but let's try. So, oh yeah. So we're getting better pictures. So, but look here, that's a little more. Okay. So, hey, what is that? Yeah. Maybe I'll send that. Maybe I'll do some good AI, fancy graphics to get a better. Maybe it'll be more helpful than the old age of black and white. I was a kid. So okay. So Hechanaya knows though. Hechanaya knows. So where do they put the kior and the altar? They put the altar bein ha'ulam v'lamizbeach mashoch kima klape darom. So the altar was so the kior, sorry. The altar we don't know yet. Now we're going to find out in a second. However, what it says is that the kior, the sink, the washing station, was slightly towards the south. And somehow being slightly to the south of the altar is going to suffice to have the sink corresponding to the opening, and you're going to have the altar correspond to the opening, and it's not going to be interposition at all. So let's see. Says the Gemara, "Mai kasavar." What do you hold? E kasavar kulum is back b'darim. If the altar is all the way here to the south, so remember, if it's all the way to the south, the opening is going to be over here, right? We need some more props. Okay, the opening is going to be. You guys gonna bring your props. So the opening is going to be here, right? This is the opening. If the altar to the south, if the altar to the south, and now the sink is to the south, what did you gain? If the altar to the south, that means that the north is corresponding to the opening, not the south. So you're putting the sink to the south. What do you gain? That doesn't make any sense. You need the sink to be corresponding to the entrance. So having the altar in the south, that's not going to help you. So Ikzav Kulim is back, but Darum Kai. So Nukme Mikosel, Heichal. Ikzav Kulim is back, but Darum Kai. So Nukme Mikosel Heichal. You'll establish it corresponding to the wall of the Heichal, Villa Darum, and you'll put it to the south. Hainu, Bain Ulam Lemizbeach. One second. How's it going to make any sense? 1 second. So you put it all the way to the south. Okay. Now, and it's corresponding to the wall of the holy. So not the holy area itself, right? The 10 amos, but then there's a wall, a thick wall. So it's going to be corresponding to that. So So 1 second. So if the altar is all the way to the south, and what? And then you're going to put the sink a little bit to the south. Where? All the way to the south of the altar? No, because that's not going to correspond.
To the south.
South of what?
It's overlapping the wall.
So meaning you can have the altar all the way to the south, and you're going to have the kior sticking out, I guess, by the south, and that's going to be corresponding to the wall of the Heichal. How's it going to work? Because how's it going to work?
No. You go 5 amas. The Mizbech is 5 amas.
Oh, the Mizbech is not in the south.
It is in the south, but it's still 5 amas each.
No, the Mizbech is in the middle.
Yeah,
oh, no, the Mizbech is in the south. So, okay, good. So that means, okay, good. So when the altar is in the south, it means that the northern part of the altar, so the altar was 32 amos. So that means that the 5 amos, the most northern part of the altar, corresponds to the actual opening. Okay, good, thank you. The actual opening of the holy area. And then you're going to put the kior a little bit to the south of that, and that's going to correspond to the wall of the holy of the holy area. It's not to the opening to the wall. Therefore, each one is good to go. You're corresponding to the opening. You're still corresponding to the wall of the holy area, and you're not an interposition at all. You're not blocking the view. Fine. So the inami kasavar kedushas heichal v'ulam chad. He led to you hold that the sanctity of the holy area, and then the antechamber is going to be one sanctity. So then, nukme mikosel ulam viladarum bebein ulam lemizbeach. Then you could establish the sink area from the wall of the ulam into the south. So you can put it even more to the south because the antechamber is wider. It's a wider opening than the holy area. So that wall to the south, you could do that too, and that'll fulfill your requirement. That's one option. Inami, maybe you'll say no. The altar is actually in the middle, smack in the middle, and the middle of the altar, the 10 amos are corresponding to the 10 amos of the opening of the holy area. So now, where do you put the sink? Nukme mikosel heichal viladarum bein ulam v'lemizbeach. You do the same thing. You have the altar smack in the middle, and now it corresponds to the entrance. What are you going to do? You're going to put the sink a little to the south, so it's not blocking the entrance at all. However, it corresponds to the wall of the holy area. So it's still considered corresponding to the holy area. And if you hold that there's one holiness between the holy area and the antechamber, so you can even put it, then you gained even more. You can put it even more to the south, corresponding to the wall of the antechamber. So now, one second. Now, 1 second. These are all problems for us, right? Why? Why are they problems? I think, right? Because I think the actual statement was you should put it a little bit to the south. That was the original statement. But here you could put it a lot to the south, not a little bit. Those are all these questions. According to if you put it in the south, or if you put it in the middle, and you have a large area, you can put the sink more to the south. And the original statement was put it a little bit to the south. Is that how they understand the problem? I mean, what's the problem with all these options? We're rejecting all of these options. What's the problem? Unless what the problem is that you can't put it corresponding to the wall, it has to correspond to the opening. Maybe that's the problem. Let's see. Maybe that's the problem. Okay. Right. He said you should put it slightly to the south. The question is why slightly to the south? If it's all the way to the south, so you can put it all the way to the south and you're fine. If it's in the middle, you can also put it to the south and you'll be okay. Right. I think that's the problem. Right. Why did you have to? Yeah, I think that's the problem. Why do you have to put it a little bit? It has to be drawn slightly to the south of the altar. Only slightly with diagram A in the beginning. Diagram, let's see, diagram A. Diagram D. Slightly to the south. You have to somehow get it slightly to the south so that it's totally. Meaning, why do you have to put it slightly to the south? Why can't you place it directly between the altar and the heichal? So that was the question. Really, according to the plain meaning of the verse, you should put the sink directly between the altar and the heichal. Now, if you do that, there's going to be an obstruction. So now the Gemara gave a bunch of options where there's no obstruction, right? Those are the options. Now, if you put it to the south, you have the altar corresponding to the middle, and you put it over to the left, and that's also going to be corresponding to the entrance. If you put it in the middle, the altar in the middle, you'll have the sink to the left, and that's going to be also corresponding to the entrance, and it won't be an obstruction. So, according to Rabbi Yosef, clearly, why do you have to put a little bit to the south, to the south, and it shouldn't obstruct? It's a little bit to the south of the altar. It sounds like he couldn't read the verse in its plain meaning. Now, if it's all the way to the south, it's good. If it's in the middle, it's good. But yet, according to Rabbi Yosef Glili, he was forced to move it to the south so that it shouldn't be an obstruction. So let's see the next option makes more sense now. Maybe it's because he held that the entire altar was in the north. So now, kinami mukmis la mikosel heichal v'letzafon havale bein ulam v'lemizbeach. Here was his problem. His problem was if the altar is all the way in the north, all the way in the north. So now what's going to happen? If you put it on the south, it's going to be obstructing the altar from the entrance. So that's going to be in the middle. So v'nukme mikosel ulam v'letzafon. But why don't you put it corresponding to the wall of the antechamber, v'letzafon bebein ulam v'lemizbeach, and that's considered bein ulam v'lemizbeach. That's between the antechamber and the altar. So, one second. That's already a new suggestion. So 1 second. So the altar was the reason why Rabbi Yosef had to say this was because why? Because he held the altar was all the way in the north, and if it was in the north, so what would happen? Therefore, if it's in the north, the entire southern part of the altar is corresponding to the opening. And if you would put it there, it's going to obstruct between the southern part of the altar and the opening to the holy area. So what did he have to do? So where did he put it at the end of the day? Where's the picture he put it? South of the Mizbeach, not corresponding to the opening. No. This diagram. Yeah. So good. The entire altar was in the north. So now he had to put it sticking out a little bit because right, you see every other picture here, if it's in the south or in the middle, you don't have to put the key or the sink sticking off the edge. You could put it even between the altar, like meaning even in front of the altar, and it won't be an obstruction. Right? So if you look at the pictures, diagrams, I don't know, A through F or G, so you'll see that if the altar was in the south, or if it was in the middle, so then where does the sink go? It can be in front of the altar, and it still won't be an obstruction because part of the altar is still corresponding, it's still directly parallel to the entrance. The only area where you cannot put the sink directly in front of the altar is going to be if the altar is all the way in the north. If the altar is all the way in the north and you were to put it in front of the altar, that's going to obstruct the altar from being directly corresponding to the entrance. Therefore, Rabbi Yosef really said, you have to put the kiyur sticking off the edge. So you have the altar, which corresponds to the entrance, and then you have the kiyur here. In diagram, which one is this? G. No, G. In diagram G. So there you see a very good illustration that you have the altar all the way to the north, and the kiyur is sticking off the edge a little bit. And that's how you fulfill both verses. The altar is corresponding to the entrance, and the kior is corresponding to the entrance. Yeah. Now, the question was like this. Now, fine, that's very good. But maybe you could do, why don't you put the sink, so right now the altar is all the way to the north. It's all the way in the north. And the south part of the altar corresponds to the entrance of the heichal. Fine. Why don't you put the north? Why don't you put the sink? Sorry. Why don't you put the sink more north? Why don't you put the sink more north? Mikosel heichal v'letzafon. That's also habale ben ulam v'lemizbeach. Sorry. V'nukle mikosel ulam uletzafon. If you put the sink corresponding to the wall of the antechamber, so you have the heichal, 10 amos. The antechamber is 5 amos wider, and there's a wall there. So why don't you put the sink not all the way to the south, put it to the north? It'll still be in front of the altar, but it won't be obstructing it being parallel, because the southern part of the altar will correspond to the opening of the heichal, and now you put the sink in front of the northern part of the altar, and it'll be corresponding to a wall of the ulam, a wall of the antechamber, and you'll still fulfill the requirement. That the Gemara says, really, you could have done that, except there's a verse. What's the verse say? Amar Kra Safona. The Gemara learns that it has to be to the north. Safona, she hates Safon, Hanui Mikalim. There's exposition that the northern part has to be free of any vessels. So there cannot be any vessels in that northern area. That's why you're forced to put the sink all the way to the south. Okay. Fine. So that's that. Yeah, Rashi says that it could have said you put it on the side to the tzafon. Al yerech hamizbeach tzafon. Why does it say tzafona in that funny way? To teach you this. Fine. Montana de Polygalá, Rabbi Yosef Glili. Who is the author who argues on Rabbi Yosef Glili and says that the altar is not in the north, the altar is in the south? Who is that? Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov. That's the opinion of Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, the Tanya, as the Brisa says. Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov Omer Tzafona, she hates Tzafon Panu Mi Klum. The north has to be empty of everything, not just of vessels, even of the altar itself. So he holds you cannot put the altar in the north; it has to be in the south. Even the altar, special, right? The north gets a lot of recognition in the Torah. Slaughter in the north, no vessels in the north, no altar in the north. Something about the north is unique. You have to know. Yeah. Okay, fine. So basically, that concludes that there's 3 opinions exactly. There's three opinions that could be the potential author of that Mishnah that says the second pyre has to be 4 amos from the southwest corner. 3 opinions that we see that could show you, that proves to you that the altar is all the way in the north. And we have a dissenting view, 2 dissenting views. One is that it's in the middle, and one is that it's in the south. Sorry. Okay. So more about the altar. Amar Rav, what if the altar got damaged? Mizbeach shenifkam. Pogum, it got damaged. Kol hakachim shenishchetu sham psulim. So if the mizbeach, if the altar got damaged, so then any offerings that are slaughtered are going to be invalid. Yeah. Now, what we're going to be discussing is, what if when it's sanctified, the offering, the altar is damaged, but then the altar gets fixed? What would you say? Who cares? Now it's fixed, to go slaughter it, right? Right. The problem is there's something called dichui. Dichui means that if at one point, I think we actually had this, maybe second Daf Yomi Zevachim or something, that dichui means that at some point, if it's invalid, it might be invalid forever. So if at the time it's sanctified, it's good. But now the altar got damaged, so now it's not good anymore. Even after it gets fixed, it's still no good. Once it's pushed away, it's pushed away. Yeah, the question is going to be, there's a debate. Does that rule apply only when it had one moment of time that it was fitting for the altar. But if it was never fit for the altar, it was never pushed away. So if when you sanctified the offering, the altar was broken, so and now it gets fixed, so that's not called pushed away. Maybe pushed away means it has to be fitting, not fitting, and then it's pushed away. But if it was never fitting to begin with, so then that rule might not apply. So first, let's go to Rav. Then we're going to have Rav Yochanan. Then we're going to have what they argue about, and then it's going to be Shabbos. So Rav Rav said if the altar is damaged, any offerings that are slaughtered on it or in the courtyard area, when the altar is damaged, are going to be invalid. And he's like, I knew a verse that says this, I just forgot. And they forgot what the verse is. Okay. He saw the kind of went up to Eretz Yisrael. Ashkelon Reb Shimon Bar Rebbe. He found Reb Shimon Bar Rebbe. The Kamar Reb Shimon Bar Rebbe Yossi, who said in the name of Reb Shimon Bar Rebbe Yossi, how do I know that the altar which is damaged, all the offerings that are slaughtered are going to be invalid? What's the verse? Shenamar, as it says in Shmos, when we're building the building of the tabernacle, it says, you're going to slaughter on it your ola offerings and your peace offerings. Okay. Says Gemara, it sounds like you have to slaughter on the altar. Says Gemara, but that's not true. You don't have to slaughter on the altar. Our Mishnah says you could slaughter on the altar. You don't have to slaughter on the altar. So why does the Torah imply that you have to slaughter on the altar? Ella, what it means is you have to slaughter when it's complete. Ella kishahu shalem, below kishahu chaser. So, yeah, if the slaughter doesn't mean on the altar, it means slaughter on the altar when the altar is in its full state. You can slaughter it even not on the altar, but the altar has to be in its complete state. That's the exposition. Fine. Well, in the English, what's the difference between deficient and damaged? I don't know. In English, what deficient? Maybe that's the point. If it's missing something, then it's actually deficient. It's not just damaged and you could use it. It's deficient and you can't use it, right? Yeah. Right. Okay, good pickup. So, okay.
I have a question. What kind of damage are we talking about?
Oh, that's a good question. I'm assuming any part of it is chipped away. If any part of the measurements are lacking. So if you need 2 amos over here and 4 amos over there and whatever amos are, and now part of it is missing, let's say you're missing part of the base, part of the ledge, one of the horns is missing. You're asking a good question, meaning let's say one of the horns is missing. Does that mean the whole altar is going to be deficient? Sounds like it has to be complete. Whatever the Torah says, it has to be that. If it's not that, then it's deficient. But that's an educated guess. But the question is better than I have an answer for. But usually all of Donna's questions get answered at some point. Even we still don't know how they take the blood out of the Kohanim's clothing. Now we're still looking for an answer. But waiting for Elio, yeah. So that is the pasuk that Rav learned. Okay. Fine. So he says back, Amra, that was the pasuk we were looking for. Amra, Hainu Krad, Ishtamit Le Rav. That was the pasuk that slipped Rav, that slipped his mind, that he forgot. Good. Now, Rabbi Yochanan Amar, Echad Zeh, whether the altar is damaged, not only can't you slaughter offerings, but even offerings that were sanctified. If the Mizbeach was afterwards damaged, then you cannot slaughter them there anymore either. Even though now it's fixed and now you're ready to slaughter the animal, it doesn't matter. It's still going to be invalid. Now, why is that true? The Gemara is going to ask. Yeah. So let's see. So, okay, before we... B'mai pligi, what do they argue about? Rav savar balei chayim ein nidachin. Rav holds that animals are not pushed away. Meaning, Rav said only once it's when you want to slaughter it, if the altar is not complete, you cannot slaughter it. But Rav never said if it's sanctified and the altar is not complete, and then it gets fixed, you can't slaughter it. It was just, why? Because he holds that this idea that if an animal is invalid and then it becomes valid, that's not an invalidation. Even if it's invalid, when it's sanctified. Step 1 is it's sanctified. Step 2 is the altar got damaged. Step 3 is the altar got fixed. So do we say once it's invalid, it's always invalid? Or do we say no? Just because it's invalid, as long as the deficiency gets fixed up, then we're good to go. So Rav says we're good to go. Rabbi Yochanan says no. He holds of a principle that once it's pushed away, it's not fitting to be used. If an animal gets a blemish, let's say, and now it gets healed, maybe the same thing. I think earlier we had by about tshuva, who goes off, he always can come back. It's not called going off. We have to review, but on I think the second page of Zevachim, 2b, I believe, at the top somewhere. We'll find it later, yeah. So, okay, so that's that. Now, Meisvei, Kol HaKachim, Shahayu Achla Nivnei Mizbeach, V'achar Nivnei Mizbeach, Psulin, all the holy offerings, Shahayu Achla Nivnei Mizbeach, you sanctified them before the altar was built. And now the altar was built. What happened to them? Psulin. They're going to be invalid. So don't you see that if it's not fitting at some point, because there's no altar at all, that it's not fitting at all? Says the Gemara, hold on. That case is different. That case, it was never fit in the beginning. You sanctified an offering with no altar to put it on. So that we need a time that's fit and then not fit for this debate. So Nivna, that itself is a debate. Do you apply this rule if it was never fit in the beginning? We're not getting involved in that. So what does it mean to say? It means Ella Achlo Neras Hamizbeach. What it means to say is you sanctify the offering, and then you sanctify the offering, then the first temple was destroyed, so then there's no altar. Now you want to know, by the time the second temple comes around, can you now offer it? Now, I was going a little bit crazy over here because that's a long time. So the Gemara is going to ask in the next line. I was like, what is going on? Okay. So says the Gemara, Neras ha'iskin lahu. Your offerings are not lasting for a long period, that long of a period of time. It's just not happening. You're right. So Elo, what it means to say is Achelo nifkam ha'mizbeach, the achar kach nifkam ha'mizbeach psulin. Says the Gemara, the Brisa has to read like this. Is you sanctified it, then it was not deficient, then it became deficient, and then what happened was it got fixed. So there we say it's invalid. Oh, it's invalid. That's a proof for Rabbi Yochanan and an attack on Rav. On that, the Gemara says, how's Rav going to defend himself? Says the Gemara, you already showed me that the Brisa was a little bit it was a little deficient. You had to fix up some of the words. So fix it up one more. Below Terutz Kamatartsta. So Ema Shenishchatu. You already had to change some of the text of the Brisa. So text it that instead of sanctified, say that it was slaughtered, meaning the altar is damaged, and now you want to slaughter the offering. Not that they were sanctified, but you want to slaughter them. Oh, if you want to slaughter them, that Rav agrees that if the altar is deficient, you cannot slaughter any offerings afterwards. That's fine, but it wouldn't be a proof against them. Okay. Now the Homer of Gidol Marav says Gidol Marav Mizbeach Shenakar Maktirin Ketoras B'Mkomo. Very interesting. We have in the name of Rav that an altar, we're talking about the inner altar where the Ketoras, the special Ketoras, was brought. Let's say it got uprooted from its place. Says Rav, you could still bring the Ketoras in that place. So the inner altar, missing, vanished. Poof, it's gone. So now you can walk in and you can still offer all the Ketoras in that same place. So 1 second. Rav just told us if it's deficient a little bit, you cannot offer a sacrifice. And now you're telling me in the name of Rav, if it's gone, you can just offer in its place. So what does that mean? Kida Amar Rava. like Rava. Rava said in another context, you got to see, Mo the higher Rabbi Yehuda b'damim. Rabbi Yehuda agreed that when it comes to sprinkling the blood, you have to have the altar. But when it comes to the sacrifices, that you could do even on the floor of the courtyard. Hachanami moder Rav b'damim. So to here, we should say that Rav agrees that to sprinkle the blood, you'll have to have the outer altar. But for the mizbeach, if it's gone, you could still offer the kores in its place. Times 45. Okay, I guess we'll stop here. It's a new section. It's tomorrow. Tomorrow's Friday.